Sunday of last week was the funeral of Maya and Rena D. And just two days later, on Tuesday, was the funeral of their mother, Lucy, Leah. These horrible, tragedies just came as the thought shocking, like you said, Jeremy, third set of siblings killed after the Yaniv brothers and the Peli brothers. And, shortly after that horrible tragedy, right on the last day, right before the last day of Passover, two siblings from Tiberia were killed in a flash flood as well. I've asked so many people, and no one I know can even remember any time in the last decades in Israel's history, a time like this where there were so many multiple family members, specifically siblings, being killed consecutively like this. It's just, it's like Hashem is saying something to us. And, on this week of Pesach, when we're, burying another set of siblings killed for no reason other than being Jewish, what was so insane was that I saw how, as you said, Jeremy, the Torah portion was the Torah portion of Shemini, which is essentially the old Torah portion that speaks of a family losing two sons, two brothers, Aharon's sons, Nadav and Avihu. And, and the similarities go even deeper, because just like Israel now losing beloved siblings on what's meant to be our happiest time, the holiday of our freedom, Passover, Aharon lost his two sons in what was meant to be the happiest day for Israel, the desert, the glory of Hashem was going to appear to the nation. And, in fact, not a lot of people notice this. The ceremony that we read about in this past Torah portion of the sanctification of the tabernacle actually happened in the month of Nisan that we're in right now. The Ibn Ezra says that Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aharon, died on the 8th day of Nisan. And what that actually means is that the Shiva, the 7 days of mourning, actually ran into Passover. And so, so it's like we're seeing like that this week's Parsha, it doesn't just echo what happened, but it also takes place in the same season that we're in. I wanted to look to the Parsha to try to illuminate the way for us a little bit here. And there are so many, there are 54 portions in the Torah. The odds of burying two sets of siblings in Israel on the same week that this Torah portion comes out are so small, it just can't be a coincidence. And then I thought to myself, well, where should I look? Where should I look? Well, another kind of thing that took place was that on the day of the funeral of Rena and Maya, it was also the 30th anniversary of the passing of Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik Zatzal. Rav Soloveitchik was the great scholar and leader of American modern Orthodoxy in the 20th century. He was known to American Jews because of his greatness and his stature simply as the Rabbi. You go to an American Orthodox Jew and you say, the Rav says, the Rabbi says, they'll know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about Rav Soloveitchik because he was a visionary scholar, philosopher. He led the way for religious Zionism and modern life as a Jew in the world after the Holocaust. He led the way for women getting Torah education and so many more things. So because of the anniversary of his passing came out on the same day as the funeral, I wanted to look to his writings and see if he had something on this week's portion that could help us. And sometimes when you don't know what to say, it's better to just be silent and kind of let the great sages speak for us. I want to let the Rav Soloveitchik speak instead of me, excuse me. What Rav Soloveitchik, what's so remarkable is that Rav Soloveitchik actually speaks about this in commenting on this week's Torah portion. Rav Soloveitchik says that Aharon, the high priest, was met with disaster. On the most joyous day of his life, when the tabernacle was dedicated, he was inaugurated to his office and two of his sons died. So Rav Soloveitchik says that death is this, is the hardest thing to face, and even harder to lose a child, and even harder to lose two children. And the Rav says, even harder to lose two children in a situation we can't possibly understand, in a situation where they were seemingly trying to come close to Hashem. And, they were seemingly righteous people. And this is so difficult to understand. And what happens afterwards is it's so staggering when you read the Torah portion of this past week, because you would think that in all of this, there'd be like a moment, just give Aharon a moment. But the portion goes on to say that Moses said to Aharon, you mustn't mourn They were not allowed to shed a tear, it says, because they were more than just individual people. Rav Soloveitchik says the priests constituted a community of the anointed who were consecrated exclusively to the service of Hashem. So that right to, mourn the death of a child was not given to Aaron and his son because their commitment to Hashem was ultimate and all-inclusive. And what does that mean? What does that mean for us? What does that teach us? It says, the Rav Soloveitchik asks, what does that mean, like psychologically? He says that Hashem wanted Aaron to disown the strongest emotion in man, the love for a child. And listen to Rav Soloveitchik's words, it's just mind-blowing. He says, is that possible? As far as modern man is concerned, I would not dare answer. That's what he says. He goes, I don't know if any modern person can live up to the challenge that Hashem put to Aaron. With respect to biblical man, he says, we read that Aaron indeed acted to the divine instruction. It says in the verse, they did it according to what Moshe said. Aaron was able to set aside his individual feelings and just be completely dedicated to Hashem. And Rav Soloveitchik says we learn from that as he said, what he calls the covenantal community, the community that lives in covenant with Hashem. He says, usually we look at halakha as something soft and loving, and that's what it usually is. Usually, and we talk about this a lot here on the fellowship, how the Jewish law works so much in accordance with our nature, and Hashem deals with us so kindly. But sometimes he said the halakha makes demands upon us, like the demand that Hashem makes upon Aaron to set aside his personal feelings and continue the ceremony for all of the nation. Sometimes the halakha, the Jewish law, the Torah law makes demands upon us that seem just so difficult, but they take us to the higher level that we need to get to. And then this is where I just couldn't help but make the connection. He says, let me bring you an example of how this could happen to a person in modern life, how there could be an Aaron situation like what we had in our Torah portion in our everyday life. He says, let me bring you an example. And I got chills down my spine when I saw one example that he chose to bring, because it's like as if he was speaking to us right at this moment. He says, let me give you an example. We know that the law is that a festival suspends the mourning when one of your relatives passes away. Meaning, like if one of your relatives passes on one of the three festivals, on Sukkot or on Passover or on Shavuot, then it suspends the mourning process. And he says, mourning is where you face the depth of your sorrow. And the festivals are where Hashem commands us, you must be joyous on the festival. It's like, what two greater contrasts could there be? And he says, you have to listen to these words. So let us visualize the following concrete situations. He wants to bring us an actual example of how you can be in an Aaron situation, a situation like Aaron faced in our portion. He says, let us visualize the following situation. He says, a mourner who has buried a loved wife or mother returns home from the graveyard where he left a part of himself. He is in a mood to question the validity of our very universe. The house is empty, dreary. Every piece of furniture reminds him of the beloved person he buried. Every corner is full of memories. But the halakha, the Jewish law, addresses itself to the lonely mourner, whispered to him, rise from your mourning, cast the ashes from your head, change your clothes, light the candles, recite over the cup of wine, the Kiddush, praising Hashem for giving us festivals of gladness and a sacred season of joy. As if nothing had transpired, as if your beloved person over who you are grieving were still with you. He says, even though the halakha, the Jewish law, can sometimes be like tender and understanding, sometimes it is demanding of obedience. And he says, the halakha, the Jewish law, suggests to man broken in body and spirit, carrying the burden of an absurd existence, that he change his mood, cast off his grief, and choose joy. And then he says, I want to repeat the question. Is such a metamorphosis of an individual possible? The question Rav Soloveitchik is trying to figure out is this something that only Aaron, only biblical man can do? Or is it something that people like us can do? He says, can somebody make that leap from hopelessness to joyous trust? Can somebody replace the experience of monstrosity with the highest meaningfulness? And he says, I have no right to judge. I can't judge. And then he says, he kind of finishes cryptically, he says, but I know of people who have attempted to perform this greatest of miracles. And he says, if somebody is able to do this, this is the greatest of miracles of us. And, when I read that, I got such chills because, the Torah is being brutally honest with us. He's saying the Torah is being brutally honest with us. The journey of life will break us, and everyone is at the level that they're at, and they'll be tested at the level they're at. But from that, you can rise up and achieve this metamorphosis. And that would be the greatest miracle. What struck me most is that he says, this is something that I know a biblical man could do, but he kind of leaves it as an open question. So I have to share with you a message that we got on WhatsApp from a friend of Jeremy's who was in the synagogue with Rabbi Leo D, with the father who lost his wife and his 2 daughters. It was the last night of Passover. The funeral was at 2:00. So imagine, we're talking about a matter of just a few hours after his beloved wife's funeral, just 3 days after his daughter's funeral. And because of the holiday, he wasn't allowed to mourn. Rav Soloveitchik envisioned, God forbid, a situation where somebody buried their wife on Passover. He envisioned a situation where Aharon buried 2 children. He didn't dare to imagine a person facing those 2 things at the same time. And so this gentleman wrote to us. He said, I prayed next to the D family on the holiday. After such difficult days for our community, as the holiday began, the D family came into the synagogue upright and heads held high. In the morning, I came a few minutes before the prayer service. The D family was already there. Rabbi Leo sees me and comes to me to offer a warm, loving hug and blessed me with a happy holiday. But still in the synagogue, everyone can feel the tension between sorrow and joy. The prayer leaders struggled to find the proper balance. It was so hard. And then comes the festive Hallel prayer. Those are the psalms that we joyously sing on every festival. The first psalm, no one sings it. And then I thought maybe the prayer leader feels it inappropriate to start singing. Maybe he'll sing the next psalm. The next psalm comes and speaks of Israel leaving Egypt. The prayer leader doesn't sing, and everyone's hearts begin to sink and feel the mourning. And I begin to understand that this last day of the holiday, we're not going to be singing the prayers. We're going to just be saying them quietly to ourselves in sorrow and in pain and in tears. But then at that moment, he writes, Rabbi Leo gets up from his place, goes over to the prayer leader. Rabbi Leo gently puts his hand on him, hugs him, and whispers something in his ear. And then the prayer leader looks at Rabbi Leo, and immediately starts singing in a tune that uplifted the spirit of every person to the highest heights. And from there on, we sang the entire rest of the prayer. We sang together every word. What did Rabbi Leo say? I went to the prayer leader after the service and I asked if he would share with me what Rabbi Leo had whispered in his ear. He said, he whispered in my ear, please make it joyous. And so it was, he writes, joyful and a little sad, but mainly comforting. And he finishes this letter that he wrote saying, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. So, I don't have words of wisdom to make it make sense. Make of that letter what you will. And I don't know why things are so, but I can only marvel and invite all of us to marvel at the miracle that is the nation of Israel, that through the worst suffering are birthed forth people of such character that they literally rise. They literally are able to rise to the level of our biblical heroes, to the nobility of our biblical heroes that our great sages could only wonder and envision the possibility of their existence. So I don't know, I don't know how to comfort us and how to comfort anyone, but all I can do is be grateful that there are people like Rabbi Leo and like the other heroes of Israel that stand with their heads high and carry for all of us the burden of the responsibility and the difficulty of being a Torah believer in the world that we live in that has so much evil, as you said, Jeremy, but they just shine so much brighter than any of that. So may the merit of the righteous people of the Bible, and the righteous people of biblical proportions that are being born today light the path for all of us to our final redemption. And may Hashem wipe the tears from every face.